Hey, I'm Allison from Learning at the Primary Pond, and in this video, I'm going to explain how we can get our kindergarten, first grade, and second grade students to write and complete sentences successfully. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, make sure to do that now, and then also hit the little bell so that you're notified every time I post a brand new video about teaching literacy in K2. Okay, so if you're having any trouble getting your students to write and complete sentences, please know that you're not alone. Would love for you to share in the comments if you found that it's hard for your students to write and complete sentences that use correct grammar. Let me know in a comment. Now, I want to talk about why, just briefly, why this can be so challenging. And the reason is because, when we're writing, we're putting oral language, things that we say out loud, onto paper. However, written language is different from oral language. So sometimes our kids may talk in complete sentences and sometimes they talk in fragments, right? Like, what do you want to play for recess? Tag. That's not a complete sentence, right? And so when we're actually getting them to write things down, we have to help them understand, and this takes time, that oral language and written language are different, right? There's a connection, but they're not exactly the same. Another thing you may notice your kids doing is writing in run-on sentences, sentences that never seem to end. I went to the park and I played on the swings and I did this and that, right? That's a run-on sentence. Now, when we speak, we, even as adults, often speak in run-on sentences. So again, it's all about getting them to understand the difference between how we use oral language and how we use written language. And so again, this takes a lot of time. It takes patience. It's not necessarily going to be something where at the beginning of the school year, especially not with kindergarten or like first grade, we say, oh, well, I'm only going to let my kids, write a couple of words or like one sentence because their sentences aren't perfect. No, we need to get them writing sentences and practicing. That's how they learn to write sentences, is by practicing writing sentences. And what we're doing is we're providing instruction all the time that helps them refine and improve upon what we're doing. So we provide that explicit instruction. We have them, write and make changes to their sentences, and over time they improve. But again, it does take a lot of time. So let's go into these tips that will help your students write in complete sentences and just write better sentences in general. All right, tip number 1 is to model. This is pretty basic, but I can't highlight enough how important it is for your kids to see you write. So actually watch you write in front of them, large, so that they can see it, and for you to think aloud about what you're doing. Oh, I'm putting my capital letter here. I'm putting a period because my sentence is finished. You can also even talk about like, oh, well, I started my sentence, but I know this is not a complete thought, right? Like the big dog. That's not a complete thought. The big dog what? I need to tell more about the subject of my sentence. So talk as you're writing about complete sentences and talk about how, oh, you know what? This is a complete thought. So I'm not just going to add another and. I'm going to finish my sentence here and I'm going to start a new sentence. So they need to hear you talking about what you're doing and why. And that can happen during your writing lessons, but it can happen during any time of the school day, right? Maybe you're writing about a science experiment, or you're writing about some reading, like a book that you all read together. You can insert just this little talk about sentences pretty much any time of the school day that you're writing. So model, model, model. Tip number 2 is to use sentence frames and use them strategically so you're gradually releasing responsibility to students. Now, sentence frames or sentence starters are things like, here's an example. So I don't know how well you can see this, but I'll read it to you. I'm looking for the big, and then the kids like fill in the sentence. Or, I like to blank, and the kids fill it in. I want to make sure from the start of the school year that my kids know how to write a complete sentence and they see me do it. However, sentence frames can come in and be a really good support. They can help them gradually, learn to write sentences or learn to write better sentences on their own. So here is a really simple example of something that you might do with kindergarten students. So it says, we see a log, and their job is to trace it. You might have to help them with reading it. And then all of these sentences are going to follow the structure, we see a. And the reason why it's repeated is because the more kids hear a certain sentence structure, the more it becomes internalized, and then they're able to come up with those sentences correctly on their own. This is especially helpful for English language learners. We see a log. The next time we see a, and they have to use the picture to see that there's a fox, so they fill in the word fox. We blank. This time they have to write we see a, and they also have to fill in the word bug, and this time they also have to put the period in there. And then in the last sentence, they're supposed to write, we see a kid, right? But it's all up to them at this point. So the sentence structure is the same. We're teaching them this structure of we see a, but then gradually, and this is the gradual release of responsibility, they're writing more of the sentence on their own. So it's not just here's the sentence frame and you're going to use it, and then maybe later you write a complete sentence. It's actually like bit by bit released to them. So this is a very simple example. Let me show you just like one other example. And actually I have a couple more after this, but this is an example of learning to write questions. So this first question says, what is on the rock? And then next they're supposed to write, what is on the tent? And they only fill in the word what. And then here it's what is on the box? And they're filling in 2 words and the question mark. And in the last one, they're supposed to write, what is on the van? So again, gradually released to them. So again, tip number 2 is to use sentence frames, but it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Like here's a sentence frame or you're not using a sentence frame. You can gradually release responsibility for writing these sentences, just like I'm doing in these worksheets. And by the way, I will include a link for these worksheets along in the caption for this video. All right, tip number 3 is to integrate your grammar instruction, integrate grammar concepts to help students improve their sentences and learn to write different types of sentences. So obviously we have one difference here. We have like statements versus questions, which is a grammar concept, right? Learning to write questions. And then, when you're teaching adjectives, teach them not just what adjectives are, not just how to brainstorm different adjectives, but how to write sentences with adjectives. So in this one, it says the first sentence is, I'm looking for the red pen. I'm looking for the big tent. And then this time I'm looking for and they have to come up with some kind of adjective to describe this lock. I'm looking for the silver lock. I'm looking for the small lock. And then in the last one, they have to write a whole sentence. I'm looking for the red crab or the small crab or whatever kind of adjective they want to use. So when we're teaching these grammar concepts, we also want them to apply it to sentence writing, because that's the whole point of learning grammar, right? Not just so they can come up with a list of adjectives or tell if a word is an adjective or not, but actually be able to write sentences with adjectives. Here's one more example of integrating a grammar concept. And this integrates regular past and present tense verbs. So the first sentence here is, I look for shells today and I looked for shells yesterday. Okay. The next one is, I kicked the ball today and I kicked the ball yesterday. And they have to fill in just the past tense verb. I play tag today and I played tag yesterday. And then on the last one, they're supposed to write, I jumped today and I jumped yesterday. So again, you're gradually releasing responsibility for them and you're integrating those grammar concepts. In that case, it was verbs. All right, I know that was a lot of information, so feel free to go and rewatch this video. I will include a link to these supported sentence writing worksheets. I have them for kindergarten, first and second grade. I will include that with this video, and of course, feel free to let me know if you have any questions. Hope this was helpful. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and I will see you in my next video.